is a voice for the voiceless. Keep her safe, keep her strong, and bless these children she's trying to protect. Amen. Saints, somebody tell him thank you as we get ready to hear from Pastor Collier coming up here in about 5 more minutes. Oh, he is worthy to be praised. Amen. Come on, somebody. California Choir. You are listening to Words of Inspiration and Prayer from the altar with Pastor Mitty Collier right here at Spreaker.com. I am your host, Brenda White, coming to you live from the city beautiful Orlando, Florida. Let's get ready to hear from Pastor Collier. Pastor Collier is the pastor of the More Like Christ Fellowship Ministries, 8201 South Dobson Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. This is Richard Smallwood, Total Praise. And the next voice you hear will be none other than Pastor Mitty Collier, Defining Yourself.
Christian Fellowship Church, located at 8201 South Dobson Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, 60619, bringing you your words of inspiration, invitation, and prayer from the altar. Today, I want to talk to you on the subject, defining yourself. The scriptures found in Genesis, the 37th chapter, verses 5, 9, 23 through 28, and the 39th chapter, verses 1 through 20. Every one of us sitting around the altar today began as an embryo, which is formed immediately after fertilization. 4 weeks later, it measures about 1/4 of an inch in length. The heart is already formed, arms and legs have budded, and the umbilical cord has begun to develop. About 6 weeks after fertilization, the embryo has grown to about an inch in length, and its head is noticeably larger than the trunk. Fingers and toes have developed, and the ears have formed. The majority of the embryo's structural development takes place within the first 8 weeks after conception. Now, why the prenatal biological lesson at the altar today? Well, there is a close parallel between our time in the womb and our embryonic stage of self-discovery. In the womb, God does the work of providing us with life's necessary equipments. Why didn't we just receive a pair of legs after we were born? Well, most babies don't learn to walk until nearly a year after birth anyway. Why are we equipped inside the womb with limbs that are of no real use there? Even within the womb, these body parts are needed. Although they are not used in their fullest capacities, they are used. Not only that, but it is in the womb that a child gets used to having these body parts and learn how to work them. Not only can doctors measure a child's heart rate while it is still within the womb, but they also record movements such as kicking, spinning around, and what looks like joyful play. At certain times, they can actually see an embryo sucking its fingers and thumbs all while in the womb. These are all measurements of success for the child. They are also the beginning stages of discovery. Similarly, the very first stages of discovery of yourself are never in the open for others to see, but they are behind a veil. In the embryonic stage of discovering our destinies, no one recognizes anything special in us or about us. In this stage, we make a personal discovery of who we are. It seems boring, but this stage is one of major significance. So many people have rushed past this stage of discovery only to find themselves completely lost, uncertain about life and their future. They could have avoided years of fruitless work and uncertainty if they had taken the time to develop and understand who God really wanted them to be. On yesterday, we talked about Joseph's road to destiny. He started out as the son of the patriarch Jacob, was sold as a slave, and then finally was promoted to prime minister in Egypt, second only to the Pharaoh. But that's not the whole story. Between his slavery and his reign, Joseph did time in a prison that was exclusively for felons. This is the story. Joseph was a young man when he was sold as a slave by his brothers to some Israelites who were traveling to Egypt. Once they arrived there, Potiphar, who was a prominent official in the Egyptian government, brought him to work for him in his house. Because of the way Joseph served, he was elevated to the position of handling all the material substance of Potiphar, who really trusted Joseph so much that he never even demanded an accounting. He didn't have to hire a CPA to go over the books. He believed in the integrity of this young man. Joseph was 17, but quite handsome. We know that he had good DNA because his mother Rachel was one of the most beautiful women in Palestine. While Joseph was busy working, Potiphar's wife was busy scheming. She decided that she wanted to enjoy Joseph personally, so she tried to entice him. When she demanded that he sleep with her, Joseph was in a tough spot. Don't forget that he was a healthy, red-blooded young man who had his own desires to deal with. And on top of that, pleasing the lady of the house with certain promotion and making her angry was almost certain to hurt his career. As an officer, Potiphar would be away from home a great deal. Maybe he was away from home too much. This woman didn't tempt Joseph only one time, but again and again. It was a constant temptation to Joseph, but he did not yield. She treated Joseph in a humiliating way by inviting him into her bed. She treated him like a thing, not a person. And when her advances were rejected, she turned against him. No matter how much people talk about love and defend sex outside of marriage, my brothers and sisters, the experience is wrong, is cheap, and is demeaning. Fornication and adultery change a pure river into a sewer and transform free people into slaves and then animals. What begins as sweetness soon turns to poison. Joseph wasn't about to sacrifice either his purity or his integrity just to please Mrs. Potiphar. It took a great deal of courage and determination for him to fight this battle day after day, but he succeeded. You know that a boiling resentment started to rise up in her against Joseph. Hell has no fury like that of a woman's scorn. So one day when her husband was gone, and after arranging for the other servants to be out of the way, she launched her greatest attack. But at the same time, she saw to it that the servants were near enough for her to call them to see Joseph's garment. She grabbed Joseph's cloak and demanded his attention, but he panicked, escaped from his cloak, and ran. Mrs. Potiphar started screaming hysterically. When the servants came running, she fabricated a tale of attempted rape to cover her tracks, and Joseph was the villain. She had a pretty good story, especially since Joseph had left his cloak behind. The servants believed her, and on the surface it seemed that her husband believed her story. At least it made him angry at the moment. He was an officer in the army of Pharaoh and must have been a pretty sharp man to be among the brass, but he certainly was a stupid husband. It's my personal feeling that he recognized the kind of wife he had, and I believe she had been unfaithful many times before, and that Joseph was just another one in her series of conquests, only it just didn't work with Joseph, so she framed him. Joseph was incarcerated without further trial, and he spent several years in prison before God sovereignly got him into Pharaoh's good graces and out of jail. Becoming Mrs. Potiphar's lover would have given Joseph job security, added to his prosperity, and won him more prestige than most slaves could even imagine. All she asked was for a moment of pleasure. What on earth made him turn her down?